In solo leveling, Jinwoo resurrects the S-rank healer Byung-gu as one of his shadow soldiers, causing Dong-wook and Choi Jong-in to recoil in shock. Byung-gu's shadow immediately moves toward Cha Hai-in and effortlessly heals her. Jin explains to Baek Yoon-ho that he can instinctively sense what kind of person Byung-gu was, as he hadn't even given the shadow any commands, yet it had already begun healing Hunter Cha on its own. "I can tell he had a warm heart," Jin remarks. Clenching his fist, Baek responds, "That thing is no longer Byung-gu." The cameraman stands dumbfounded, now understanding why Jin-woo had requested the camera be turned off. He realizes this isn't something that should be broadcasted to the world. Meanwhile, a veteran hunter observes that the more intense the battle, the more Jin-woo's power grows, calling it a terrifying ability. Baek, his hand still resting on Jin's shoulder, acknowledges that Jin will face many more battles in the future and will require the S-rank healer's abilities. However, he pleads that Byung-gu has had enough of fighting and asks Jin to spare the kind shadow from further battles. Jin-woo pauses, considering the request, before gently removing Baek's hand from his shoulder. "That's the second time you grabbed my shoulder," he reminds. Recognizing that Baek is making a genuine appeal this time, he adds, "Besides, I was already thinking the same thing." He steps toward Byung-gu's shadow and cancels the extraction. At that moment, the shadow looks at Hunter Baek and offers a warm smile before vanishing. A helicopter hovers over the island as someone announces that the hunters are emerging. As the group boards, Jin tells Baek that he will remain behind as he still has unfinished business and will clear the path for them. Jin-woo summons Kaisel, turning to Baek and saying, "I'll see you later," before taking off, soaring directly through the swarming ants. Out at sea, Minoru reflects on his harrowing experience with the monstrous ant, convinced that the raid was a complete disaster and that no one could possibly defeat such a creature. However, Sugimoto dismisses his concerns, stating that the raid is officially over. Minoru, visibly shaken, exclaims, "Impossible!" Meanwhile, Sugimoto recalls his earlier conversation with Goto prior to the raid. Suddenly, alarms blare as they receive reports that the ants are beginning to spread, prompting the fleet to prepare for battle. Back in the cave, Jin-woo's shadow army wipes out the remaining ants while the mage-type soldiers incinerate the eggs. Jin notes that even eliminating the unborn ants contributes to his experience gain. As he rummages through his inventory, something catches his eye. He retrieves the Demon King's longsword. Deciding to experiment with it, he subjects the unhatched ants to a surge of electricity, realizing that leaving the weapon unused would be a waste. Without hesitation, he uses it to eradicate the remaining eggs. In the United States, David Brennan, director of the Bureau of Hunters, watches footage of Jin-woo. Michael Connor, his associate, explains that a hunter capable of controlling hundreds of soldiers is a rare anomaly, and that such power is wasted in a small country like South Korea. David nods in agreement and inquires if there's any additional information. Michael then reveals details about the Sung Il-hwan case, explaining that Jin-woo's father was discovered and detained inside a dungeon in the northeastern United States. He adds that this is the perfect opportunity since no other nations are aware of the situation. David acknowledges the strategic implications of taking two of South Korea's S-rank hunters and how it could impact diplomatic relations. Michael then asks, "Isn't he worth the risk?" After a moment of contemplation, David responds, "Can you make it happen?" Back in the cave, Jin-woo finishes up and finally reaches level 100. As he stands before the lifeless Ant King, sensing its overwhelming aura, he utters the command, "Arise." At that instant, he is engulfed in darkness, unable to perceive anything, questioning whether the extraction was successful. Suddenly, he returns to normal, relieved that he did not fail. Before him, a newly created shadow soldier of general rank kneels in allegiance. After summoning the S-rank killer Ant, Jin-woo notices an unfamiliar rank, General. He has never encountered this designation before and deduces that it must be the next tier above Elite Knight, suggesting that this ant is significantly stronger than his other shadows. As he prepares to add the queen to his army, the newly resurrected shadow suddenly speaks, startling Jinwoo by asking for a name. Confused, he questions how the ant can talk, to which it hesitantly responds, "I always could." This makes Jinwoo wonder if the ability to speak is tied to the ant's previous capabilities in life. However, he recalls that Iron, Byung-gu, and Tusk, who were powerful in their own right, were unable to speak after being turned into shadows. This leads him to speculate that speech might be linked to ranking and that his other shadows could potentially gain the ability if they level up. Testing the ant's loyalty, Jinwoo asks if it will still obey him despite the fact that he was the one who killed it. The ant replies that it is not truly dead, but rather reborn through Jinwoo's power, expressing overwhelming joy and unwavering devotion to him. The shadow soldier once again requests a name. Jinwoo initially considers calling it Emmy, which translates to ant in Korean, but finds it too simplistic. Instead, he recalls the well-known author of the ants and decides to name the shadow Beru, giving it a unique identity apart from the rest of the ants. With that settled, Jinwoo turns to the queen and commands, "Arise," successfully summoning her as a shadow of general rank. However, as soon as the queen is revived, Jinwoo notices his connection to Beru weakening. Beru explains that the queen's innate ability allows her to control the ant colony, which means his own authority over the ants is being overridden. Jinwoo observes that the queen possesses far less magic power than expected for her rank and asks for an explanation. Beru clarifies that the queen's primary function was reproduction, and without a physical body, she can no longer fulfill that role. Since she lacks combat capabilities, Jinwoo determines that there is no need for two rulers and cancels the extraction. As the shadow soldiers begin gathering magic crystals, Jinwoo halts them, stating that the crystals will be used to help rebuild JEJU Island. He notes that Beru's magic crystal alone will be sufficient for his needs. Jinwoo then contemplates how to deal with the remaining ants. Beru informs him that the surviving ants are dispersing now that their leader is gone. When Jinwoo asks for an estimate, Beru reports that there were originally 8,700 ants before the raid, with 4,000 still alive. Surprised by the high number of survivors, Jinwoo asks if Beru is capable of wiping them all out. The shadow ant confidently responds, "If you give me and order, master." Meanwhile, aboard the evacuation ships, Park Jong-soo, the guild master of the Knights Guild, shouts in alarm as the ants take flight toward them. The hunters aboard the ships launch magical attacks, causing explosions in the sky. A mage relays through the radio that the ants are heading north and clashing with the Knights Guild, while Sung Ki-hoon orders the B team to engage. As they ready themselves for combat, a female hunter from the Fame Guild suggests they join the fight, while another hunter roars, "Annihilate every single one of them!" Amidst the chaos, a hesitant hunter warns that the ants are as formidable as B-rank hunters, urging everyone to maintain formation to uphold the reputation of the Reaper's Guild. Meanwhile, a once arrogant movie star turned hunter begins to panic, prompting another hunter to mock him for being all talk. As the ants reach the shores of Korea, Lee Ju-hee asks Song Chi-yul if he believes they can handle the threat. Just as the ants charge forward, something tears through them at an astonishing speed. Shocked, Ju-hee questions what just happened, while a fire mage, unable to track the movement with his eyes, remarks on the sheer velocity of the attack. The scene then reveals that Beru is ruthlessly tearing through the winged ants.